Hello everyone, my name is Ian Cleworth and I'm the Artistic Director of Taikoz, a Sydney-based performing ensemble with taiko, percussion, flutes and movement at its heart. It's my great pleasure and honour to talk to you about my experience, thoughts, ideas and passion about taiko and indeed music in general. The subject of my talk is taiko as stage expression. It's a fascinating topic and one that has occupied my creative thinking for a long time. In fact, in many ways, it has been the underlying driving force of Taikoz and has fueled my artistic direction over the past 2 decades. I have a passion for taiko that has seen me devote my life to exploring its many facets: technical, musical, performative, cultural and philosophical. And this passion has led me into areas of discovery that has put taiko at the forefront of my creative output. My taiko journey began in 1981 after finishing my music degree in Western classical percussion, and I had the opportunity to travel to Japan specifically to study taiko. Now, it's a long story as to how I ended up there, but I was very fortunate to have had Sen Amano as my teacher. He was a dynamic and sensitive man who saw me overwhelmed when first confronted with the energy and sheer power of the large taiko, and he understood my initial hesitation to engage with these instruments. However, knowing my musical background, Amano Sensei enabled me to enter the world of taiko through the local version of oerobayashi. Having shimadaiko, a small odaiko, a tarigane and shinobué as the instrumentation, music that is highly syncopated and intricate in its construction, and a set compositional structure, Amano Sensei figured that the Hayashi music would speak directly to me. He was right, it did, and from that point I was totally hooked. Nevertheless, it was another 15 years until Taikoz was born. In the meantime, after returning to Australia, I took up the position of principal percussion of the Sydney Symphony Orchestra. But the very essence of the taiko never left me. I just couldn't see a way of expressing myself through taiko in the Australian cultural context. So it lay dormant until my wonderful friend and colleague, Shakuhachi Daishihan and former member of Sado no Kuni Ondaikoza, Riley Lee, convinced me that it was indeed possible to create a taiko group in Australia with the aim of developing our own original voice. Although at the time I couldn't see the way clearly, I knew in my heart that this was something exciting and possible, but not without a lot of hard work and dedication. Before getting to the point of Taikoz's creation in 1997, 2 highly significant experiences affected me profoundly. The first was experiencing the unique sound and aesthetic world of the legendary artist Eitetsu Hayashi in Sydney in 1988. And the second was hearing Kodo perform Maki Ishii's incredible work, Monochrome, at the Apple Theatre in Shinjuku in the early 90s. These 2 experiences left me sleepless for days. Apart from the sheer artistry on show, both Eitetsu and Monochrome spoke to me very personally. Eitetsu's approach was on the one hand rooted in Japanese culture and tradition, but on the other reflected a very modern sensibility. It was a perfect unity of deep cultural associations and contemporary expression. When he began the concert, not by striking the taiko first, but playing a long coiled spring, I heard music that I could directly identify with. I was mesmerized. Similarly, Maki Ishii's revolutionary monochrome uses a language that connected with my Western contemporary music making. His use of aleatory, thematic development, canonic writing and so on was something I could immediately understand. But at the same time, the unique sound world that he creates by using 7 shimadaiko, 3 nagaro daiko and 2 tam-tams was nothing short of mind-blowing. In both instances, I was presented with a key to my own creativity and ultimately my own decades-long taiko journey. Now, while I would never put myself on the same level as these 2 giants, by the time Riley suggested we create Taikoz, I was beginning to see a pathway that could bring together my training and love for Western classical music and my training and love for taiko. And so what is the essential spirit, heart and soul of this encounter between different musics, cultures and expressions? There are many aspects of taiko that fascinate me, but two in particular stand out. Firstly, the many instruments that make up the family collectively called taiko have a truly distinctive sound. The shima daiko, the o-daiko, the uchiwa daiko, the okero daiko, the nagaro daiko, none of these sound like anything else in the percussion world. While each obviously has its own distinct voice, they are all characterized by a wide tonal spectrum, powerful resonance, and a deep earthiness of character. The second aspect refers to the visual. Style, technique, form is intrinsically linked to the instruments. As we know, some styles are more flamboyant than others, but even a shima daiko played in a seated position draws on technical elements that see the player move in subtle but still dynamically visual ways. The connection between the oral and the visual is truly unique, a synergistic meeting of the senses where movement begets sound and sound begets movement. These inherent qualities lend themselves to the potential for creating new artistic worlds. Furthermore, deep concepts such as ma, tame, yugen, joha, kyu, among others, have the potential to infuse work with even greater depth of conception, expression, and composition. While I don't pretend to have an in-depth understanding of such things, and realize their expression in Japanese art forms is deep and exceptional, in other ways, these concepts can be perceived as universal, or at the very least, the underlying ideas can be appreciated and expressed in many other ways and contexts. Often, my ideas find expression in abstractness. I ask myself, why does my music need to be about anything? Can it express ideas that can be rendered only in music and not in language or visual imagery? I believe that thematic development, form and structure, in a compositional sense, can hold a key to creating my own original works. Although Maki Ishii expressed some visual imaginings about monochrome, the work is essentially abstract, with an incredibly well thought out logical structure and extremely original textures at its base. And if we listen carefully to the layering of the different pitches of the shima daiko, there's even harmony. What a radical thought! Taiko is capable of playing not just rhythm, but harmony and melody too. By thinking about and exploring the broad areas I've outlined, in an effort to create something different, something new, I've immersed myself in a world that seeks to unify the sound and the movement of the taiko with other aesthetic and musical concepts. For instance, one of Taikoz's collaborations with the South Indian classical dance company was directly informed by Carnatic rhythms. While another piece of mine called Morph for solo shima daiko draws on technical aspects of the Western snare drum. Exploring the wide tonal palette of the wonderful two-tone Kanade Okero and sensing how it lends itself so beautifully to polyrhythms was the source of another solo work called Waves. While I like to think that despite my music not drawing directly on traditional Japanese forms, it is still identifiably taiko, I also pay my respects to the traditions and masters of taiko, while trying to not directly copy their sound and style. In the end, it's impossible anyway, as I'm not Japanese. But when asked the question, why do you play taiko? I don't think so much about all the cultural, philosophical, technical, and musical complexities that are implied in that question, but simply answer, because I love it. In the expression of a great taiko player, one can see, hear, and sense power, beauty, grace, balance, and flow. There's a delicate intersection between hot and cold, dark and light, male and female, essentially embodying different perspectives of the same thing. And so I sincerely hope that the next generation of taiko players and composers can find their expression on the stage and explore the breadth and depth that is inherent in these most beautiful and expressive of instruments and the art form we simply call taiko.